about their own personal experiences of a forbidden love within a mixed marriage. Tonight's Inside Story.
To them, I had done the ultimate sin. I had left home with an Englishman who was of no religion, of no culture.
The brother actually came on, and in a very cold, very matter-of-fact fashion, he told me that he'd sold his cars, that a bounty hunter was going to be hired, private detectives were going to be involved, and that when we were found, he'd made sure that we were found in several bin liners.
There's never going to be one day that I don't look over my shoulder, or if a car stops beside me thinking it's them, or if somebody knocks at the door thinking it's going to be them.
It was very, very hard, that decision to make, but it was Paul or Pakistan, and I chose Paul.
Asian girls living in Britain are straddling two cultures. For some, conflict can arise when it comes to marriage. In Asian cultures, arranged marriages are traditional, but vary enormously, from well-meaning introductions to appropriate suitors, to parents actually selecting the prospective husband or wife without consultation. In some families, particularly in some of the closer-knit Pakistani Muslim communities in Britain, girls can have little or no say. To flout the wishes of their parents can be a serious matter and have severe repercussions. So some of the people in this film have been disguised for their own safety. At the age of 12, Zina's parents took her to Pakistan to meet her future husband. When she was 20, she met Jack.
I used to take our nephews and nieces down to the park. They used to play with Jack's sister's kids on the street, so therefore all the kids were together. And Jack decided one day that he'd take his nephews as well down to the park. And we were just sat there talking. The amazing thing was he used to make me laugh, and the sense of humour, it was amazing, and we could talk so openly to each other. And I remember thinking to myself that, yeah, this could be the man for me. But then there was a part of you that would move away from that, saying, no, you can't, this is wrong.
I can remember seeing her for the first time in the park, and it was just the way her hair was. She had extremely long hair there, and she just had this beautiful smile, and I was just totally captivated by her whole personality, really. I mean, I've always said I didn't fall in love with a culture or any sort of tradition. I fell in love with an intelligent woman, an individual. I can remember going up and asking Zina's older sister if I can have the permission to take her out. And she said, yeah, fine. She went, but whatever you do, don't mention it to the brothers. And although it seemed strange at the time, I understood to a certain degree. I know that the Asian community are very protective and a very close-knit community, and I knew that by that time that Zina had an arranged marriage coming up.
I mean, a lot of people tend to go through arranged marriages. I've got nothing against them, as long as it's an individual's choice. I didn't have that choice. It was forced upon me. I found it very hard to believe that my family brought me up in such a Western way, going to marry me off to a man that I had only met once as a child.
We are a minority here, and as a minority, there's a tendency for us to be much more conservative, with a small c. We tend to become defensive. It is the only way we can protect our faith and cultural identity is to stick together and preserve what little we have in terms of language, in terms of faith, in terms of culture. And therefore any threat or visible threat to that undermining of our faith or cultural identity is resisted, and resisted to the fullest. Maybe that Pakistani community in Britain is much more Pakistani in terms of its attitudes and way of life than Pakistanis in Pakistan.
As with most immigrant communities, culture, religion and tradition are cherished. And many Pakistani Muslim families maintain close links, not just within their communities in Britain, but also with their extended families back in Pakistan. 2.5 years ago, while still at university, Shazia met Richard.
We lived near each other, and really I'd just began talking to him, really, and I just found him so easy to talk to. It was like an instant attraction. Somebody I could relate to, somebody that would actually sit there and listen to me, and we just had a laugh, really. And I'd said, look, can I meet you again, kind of thing, which was not very common for a girl to sort of make an advance, but I said, look, can I meet you again? He said, well, yeah, tomorrow. And that was, at that point, that was just left there, and I just went home.
Shazia was in no doubt that her parents would disapprove, so she kept her relationship with Richard a secret.
We couldn't hold hands or cuddle or be with each other what normal people take as everyday life.
If we ever went out together, we would walk on opposite sides of the street. We'd say, I'd meet you such and such, or he'd walk behind me considerable distance, and I'd walk behind him.
Or in alleyways.
Or in alleys we would have to go
walk.
to, because people would just recognise us. But he wouldn't come anywhere near my house or anywhere near where I worked or where I studied or anything like that.
Two months after meeting Shazia, Richard converted to Islam, hoping it would not only make him a more acceptable husband, because a Muslim woman should only marry another Muslim, but that it would also bring him personal benefits.
The reason I converted was because of my past life, hanging around with the people I had and the areas I'd came from. I'd realised from getting into trouble with the police, basically, that it wasn't the right way to be. I was hoping to move on in some way, and it just so happened Shazia came along at the right time to bring me forward.
In another part of Britain, Nazreen met Paul at the factory where they were both working.
Whenever I first saw her, it just, clicked for me. So I made a beeline for her, and first off got the brush off like as you do and all the rest of it. Worked hard though. Asked her out. She told me, the situation at home. So I arranged to meet on the Saturday morning.
I had to lie to my mum and dad, tell them that I was working over.
It used to be a case of she'd come out at, say, 6. It'd be me crawling out of bed at 5:30 to get ready to come and see her.
Then I'd come out and Paul would be parked a couple of streets away from where I lived. I had to walk through the snicket and then jump in the car and...
We'd go spend the day somewhere, and then we'd drop her back off at 5 near her home, and she'd walk home. But during the week, it was a dictaphone that kept us going. I went and bought a dictaphone. I thought, that'd be a lot easier than anything else. So I used to, leave messages on the dictaphone, and Naz had a key to the car, so she then could come up and, relay everything back that happened, like the latest gossip, if you like. I used to drive past her house, and she used to sit up at the window and give me the okay sign if everything was okay at home on an evening. It was like if her parents were out, she could maybe come out for an hour or so. So it was always worth going round that evening, just in case she was coming out, sort of thing. And that was the only way I could see her.
Marrying outside the family is bad enough. Marrying in the community, within the same community, with the same faith and same racial background, is still not accepted, particularly within the Muslim community. But marrying outside your own community and outside the faith community, someone of a totally different faith or different racial backgrounds, is the worst thing that one can do.
So for 18 months, Shazia hid her relationship from her parents, even though they appeared less traditional.
We were allowed to do what we more or less wanted to do, allowed to sort of wear what we wanted to wear and so on. It wasn't, you have to wear the Asian dress, you have to wear the scarf, and so we just decided to do everything ourselves. But everything was Western up to the point where the traditions held about marriage, and that was that. I was told to marry my cousin who was in Pakistan. Everybody knew about it. Everybody in my family told everybody about it, and everybody in Pakistan knew that I was going to marry this man, and I had no, going back on it.
Nazreen's parents had also chosen a husband for her. She had met him when she was sent to Pakistan for a year at the age of 14.
I did get introduced to my first cousin, but I wasn't too keen on him. I didn't like him too much. So I'd said yes to keep the peace, and I wasn't too happy about it at all.
But many Muslims in Britain are happy to maintain the traditions and customs of their culture and religion and willingly enter into arranged marriages. Some parents have moved away from tradition and do allow their children to choose their own partners. In other families, a compromise is reached. Saika is 24 and works in London as a laboratory technician. She is marrying Shahzad, the son of a family friend. Although he was selected by her parents, they asked for her approval and consent. The couple have known each other for 4 months. Today is a happy day for everyone here. It's a marriage not only of individuals, but of families too.
Muslims prefer arranged marriage for a number of reasons. The question of honor for the family, the question of economic survival for the family, the argument that the blood is thicker than water. So when things go wrong, the family is there to support and help. Therefore, families do everything possible to resist and stop their daughters marrying outside their communities.
In our tradition, the girl always has to keep the izzat, which is to keep the family pride, and to lose that is the most shame upon the family.
Indeed, the subject is so shameful that it is rarely discussed. The women in this film asked us not to approach their families. We did approach other parents whose daughters had chosen their own partners. All were unwilling to take part.
It was a subject that people liked to hide from. As long as it wasn't happening to them, they didn't want to really take any notice. You'd always hear stories on the grapevine where young girls had either gone off with somebody else, was seeing somebody else, and you'd never hear of them again.
Zina had been seeing Jack for 6 months. Her sister, aware of the consequences, was becoming concerned.
I was starting to get threats from my sister that if I didn't stop the relationship, she was going to tell my brother and my father about what were going on. I was starting to get timed when I was going to the shop. I couldn't leave the house without seeing where I was going. I couldn't make phone calls anymore. She said that, well, we're going to send you back home. I tried to look for my passport, and I thought, when I couldn't find the passport, I thought, well, she must be serious about what she's saying. And it was coming just after Christmas when she had actually turned around and said that, well, you've got less than 10 minutes and you're going to have to break the relationship off.
Nazreen's parents were still unaware of Paul. However, they felt it was time she settled down.
They told me that it'd be a good idea if I went over to Pakistan for a long holiday and, you know, take all this jewellery with you. But I think I sort of knew what they were trying to get across, and I just didn't want to do that. I just didn't want to go to Pakistan and get married to a complete stranger.
So we thought, well, you know, rather than leave it to the last minute until one day, there's no message on the dictaphone, or rather than leave it to the very last minute, you know, do it while, you know, a bit of planning and do it that way, wasn't it?
Yeah. I knew that I'd bring shame upon my family and my mum and dad had disowned me. I knew that. I just thought that it was my life. A week before, I'd taken loads of photos of my brothers and sisters because it was just sort of building up to it. And it was very, very hard, that decision to make. But it was Paul or Pakistan, and I chose Paul.
Jack and Zina had no time to plan.
And I remember running up to my bedroom and sobbing my eyes out. And I remember the headlights of cars, the beams just going over my ceiling, and thinking to myself, if I don't go today, I'll never ever go. I've got the bags packed, all I need to do is get them out of the bedroom. I remember ripping a load of bed sheets that I had and lowering them out of my attic window early hours of the morning. The sheer fear, thinking, my God, if they wake up now, what am I going to do? It'll be the end of Jack, it'll probably be the end of me. And I thought, I've got to get out as quickly and as quietly as possible. And coming down the stairs, I thought to myself, this will be the last time I'll ever see him again. I remember thinking to myself, I'll never ever hear them say they'll love me again. And opening the kitchen window and climbing out, panically trying to close this window, my fingers and my hands just shaking, thinking, I've got to get off, I've got to get off. And walking around the corner, just picking up my bags very quickly. And I stood still almost for a minute, but it were only split seconds. I looked back at the house and I thought, this is it, never ever again.
There was a knock on the window. And I remember thinking, what the hell can that be at that time of the morning? And I just heard this voice saying, it's me, let me in. And my first reaction was, for Christ's sake, get her off the street straight away. So I dragged her in, and by that time my mother had heard the commotion and she was coming downstairs and obviously realised what had happened. I remember going into the bathroom and standing in front of the mirror, and I just remember looking, and I can still see my face now to this day, and thinking to myself, your life's never ever going to be the same again.
Richard and Shazia's relationship had also reached a critical point.
Every day when I came home, I'd always had it in my mind that I've just come back from Richard, and these people that I'm living with don't know anything about him. In a way, I felt I had to tell them, because I'd already made my mind up that I wanted to spend my life with him. And I just said, you always talk to me about marriage, can I talk to you about marriage this time? I know this man who is a Muslim, and I explained, this is what I want. First, it was really no reaction apart from, this is not tradition, this is not what you do, you're not brought up like this. But when I did mention that he was white, that really, I did receive a reaction then where I'd lost my freedom. That really took me aback. I had no idea this is the extent they would go to. I was brought up in front of the whole family, and my father said, as from now you don't have a life, you will be married in Pakistan. That will be your new life. The loving man that I could talk to had just completely transformed into something that I'd never imagined, not even anybody to be like. Somebody that I just couldn't, it was like going up against a brick wall. He couldn't even reason with you.
Just hours after leaving her parents' house, Zina and Jack were on the run with what little money they had.
My first reaction was to get us away as fast as possible. I said to Zina, you get in the back and lay down on the back, and we pulled away. I remember seeing my mum just walking up the road, crying, and that's really one of the last memories that I have of her.
To them, I had done the ultimate sin. I had left home with an Englishman who was of no religion, of no culture, to the way I had been brought up. I had also had an arranged marriage that my father wanted me to go through with. I had gone against that. I had gone against the family's wishes. To them, I had brought shame upon the family.
Shazia was unable to continue her studies or leave her home.
I've had a serious illness from a very young age. I had to have medication every day and I had to visit the doctor every week. I was refused to visit the doctor. I was bleeding. I had a lot of internal problems. They would hold the medicine like in front of me and saying, do you need this, do you need this? And I'd say, yes, I do need this. And they said, well, say yes, you'll marry this cousin. And I kept saying no. And the medicine was put away. I was always starving. And they used to say, well, do you want something to eat? Yes, we do. Well, how about marrying this cousin? You'll have such a good life. And Richard doesn't mean nothing to you. He will never give anything to you like this cousin will. If you're hungry, if you're that hungry, then you will take it. If you're not, you will continue staying in that room. I was scared, so scared they would even put a bucket in there, you know, for me to slop in and so on. But I was quite lucky because my mother would let me out, because I think she felt that, look, I think we're being a little hard on her.
Jack and Zena made their way to Huddersfield to spend the first of what would become many nights in bed and breakfast accommodation.
I didn't get in touch with my family. Zena's family were the first people that I actually talked to. And it was then that after ringing the number, and I was obviously quite nervous because I didn't know what the reaction was, how their tone would be to me, but I thought it's got to be done. So the brother actually came on, and in a very cold, very matter-of-fact fashion, he told me that he'd sold his cars, that a bounty hunter was going to be hired, private detectives were going to be involved, and that when we were found, he'd make sure that we were found in several liners. In fact, his words were that we were a pair of walking corpses.
We had to take him seriously. They believed that what I had done wrong was worth actually taking our lives for. I could live with the disowning bit, but having to be hunted for our lives was the hardest thing to cope with. I remember us both lying awake in his clothes. We would try to think how they would work, especially after finding out that they had a bounty hunter and a private investigator that they were going to get to track us down.
There are families who take this very, very badly. They feel that they have been shamed, they've been embarrassed within the community, within the family, and they will go to any extent. It becomes kind of revenge and vendetta for them, and things can as a result be very awful and very nasty. So unfortunately and very sadly, there are incidents where young people who have exercised their choice really have to run for their life.
It is impossible to find accurate figures for how many girls run away from home, but the numbers are rising. Their reasons for leaving are diverse. Inspector Martin Baines is a community liaison officer for the West Yorkshire Police. Last year, in Bradford alone, nearly 200 Muslim women were referred to his unit.
We arrange for the girl to be located in a safe place. What tends to happen then is that the families of the girl contact the police. So very often you'll find we take on the role of an intermediary in a sense. In many cases, girls return home and are reconciled with their families and nothing happens to them. But sometimes there is genuine concern that they may be sent back to Pakistan, for example, and may be entered into an arranged marriage against their will because they've left home or because they've got involved with people who their families don't approve of. And there can be very serious consequences where girls can be physically harmed, and we have had in the past occasions where they've been killed.
But Nazreen felt that her family would ultimately accept Paul.
Well, what we decided was that, you know, we couldn't live life on the run as such and try and get it sorted out. So, like, I made Naz ring her parents and try and get it sorted out. We did.
Yeah, I never wanted to ring my mum because I knew that she'd be crying on the phone, and Paul made me ring every day. And my mum, she just said, come home and, you know, you can get married and you can, you know, you don't have to live the life that you are living.
Far from accepting Paul, Nazrine's family locked her in the house.
My mum, she was friendly, and my dad, because he was really angry, and I wasn't agreeing to what he wanted me to do, just came across me, and my uncle, he just got in the way and said, look, it's not a good idea, it's not a good thing to do at all. So that just backed him off then.
But I mean, prior to this, on the phone, they promised Paul, you know, that I'll be accepted. But I mean, I tried to contact Naz, speak to her, and just couldn't get past the family.
I was just very scared, and I just packed my bags and leave again. And I found it really hard leaving because they'd locked all the doors, so I had to go to the cellar and then bolt one of the windows and go through there.
Shazia couldn't escape, and after 3 weeks was still imprisoned.
They were looking for a breakdown in me. Just that moment, I was always said, oh, we'll give her one more day, she'll have a nervous breakdown and then it'll be yes, yes, yes. I was resisting up to the point where I just felt I can't cope. But then one day I said, yes, I will, because I thought this was the only thing that I could do to get what I wanted, even mere things, basic things like food, toileting, clothes, getting, you know, going for a wash, things like that. And they forced me to sign such and such, forced me to speak, to say, no, I will not see Richard, no, I will not go out, no, I will not ever be angry with them. Yes, I'm pleased with what they say, yes, I am pleased with what they are doing, yes, I want to marry this cousin in Pakistan. That I even considered that if it came to the point where I had to marry him, I would scream the place down, I would try and run away, I would do absolutely everything to resist going. But they had it perfectly planned where they would take me to the airport, possibly drug me, which they'd thought about, or just hold me, one brother on one side and the other brother on the other side, hold me to take me.
Last year, the Foreign Office was aware of nearly 150 cases where women were taken to Pakistan and forced into arranged marriages. Jack and Zena kept on the move for fear that they would be caught or their whereabouts revealed to Zena's family through what she refers to as the Asian network.
We've always described it as a pyramid, starting at the top with my family, and then like it filters out, going into cousins, relatives, their relatives, and also into businesses like taxi workers, taxi branches, restaurant owners, and it filtering out like that. I think the only plan that we really had was to try and avoid any community, especially any county where there were a vast amount of Asians or where I would have had relatives.
One place that they were guaranteed anonymity was Cleethorpes.
All of it was just a nightmare. We were virtually not eating anything. We were like sharing bags of chips or the odd pasty. We were having to save the money. We tried to get out and about quite a bit on an evening just to stretch his legs if we could, and then get back as soon as possible.
Jack contacted his family for the first time a week after leaving home, only to hear more bad news.
I found out that what had happened is that they'd actually gone down to my mother's late at night, 3 or 4 of them, about midnight, got out of the car, smashed the windows, kicked open the front door, gone into the house. They knew that my mother was a woman who lived alone. They knew that my mother was a woman who had been extremely ill. They picked her up, threw her up against the wall, and introduced her to the man who was going to murder her son. I will ever forget that.
Further threats to Jack's mother and his sister's family led to them being rehoused.
My mother died 2 years ago, and the last years of her life was spent in fear of anticipation of them coming back again.
After 4 weeks where he had neither seen nor heard from Shazia, Richard was worried and managed to persuade her sister to pass on a letter, pretending he was just a friend. Time was running out.
I had only 2 days where everything was booked. All my clothes, everything was arranged for me. I was told, in 2 days, when you get off that plane, your cousin will be waiting, we've got a marriage ceremony waiting for you, you will get married. I received a letter from Richard explaining how he felt, and that was my turning point.
Shazia was looking for any opportunity to escape. The moment finally arrived when she was allowed to go and explain to her university why she was abandoning her course just months before completing her degree. She was escorted by her sisters.
I told them, look, I can't take this anymore. You know exactly what's happening. You can see, you don't have a voice, but it's mum and dad that are the controllers in the house, and brothers that are controllers in the house. We don't have a say. You know what's happening. You know this is wrong. Become really bitter. I was just nobody. I was walking in the house like a zombie. I said, I'm not sister anymore to you. You're better off without me. If I'm causing you far too many problems in the house, just let me go. I'm going.
She seized her moment and ran.
I went straight to Richard. I said to him, we're going to get married today. We'll go to the nearest mosque we can go to. Somebody will marry us off. And that was our plan, just to get married as quick as possible, because then literally I would be second hand. I wouldn't be any use to them.
But Richard and Shazia were unable to marry that day. Shazia left town to stay with friends. Richard remained making plans for their future, safe in the knowledge that Shazia's family were unaware of his identity. The search for Shazia was already underway.
My brothers had threatened everybody that they knew. They'd ransacked homes, they'd been to people's houses, they followed people, they've tracked people down, they wait outside for people, they make verbal threats, physical threats. They handed out photographs of me to lots of people to see, if you see this girl, please contact us as soon as possible.
During the search for Shazia, Richard's identity was discovered.
We'd come up to the door and tapped the door, and because my room was at the closest to the front door, I'd automatically went to answer it without any fear, because there wasn't initially. And I'd opened it and we'd asked if Richard was in. And I'd recognised one of the people involved. And as soon as I saw him out of the three, I just slammed the door closed again and locked it. And went into my room panicking about what I should do. And we were banging on the door, kicking it, saying let us in.
The police were called and sent them away.
He would have been beaten or threatened, don't ever go near her again. This is what you've done. They would blame him. They initially blamed him anyway. And this is what you've done, and we want to know. And they would get it out of him because they believed that he was the only one that knew where I was.
After 3 weeks on the run, Jack and Zena moved to Grimsby. They were fast running out of money and had no option but to turn to the DSS for help. They carefully explained their situation.
We had to claim in as real names. Obviously, we had no choice. So, in a lot of ways, it was the first time that we'd actually surfaced on the welfare system. And after we'd put in the claim forms, it was going to take quite a while. The landlord was okay with the fact that he knew that he was going to get his housing benefit. And a phone call came through by a Mr. Adams saying, could Zena come down to the office? That was an incompleted form, and it was important that it was signed.
The phone call came at 7:30 in the morning, and this immediately aroused the couple's suspicions. Later on, they phoned the DSS.
The woman quite plainly just said, "Thank God you phoned. We've been trying to reach you at the B&B. There's been 3 men come into the office claiming to be Zena's brothers. You must have just missed them by seconds."
On further investigation, it turned out there was no Mr. Adams, and it seemed as if someone had tipped off Zena's family as to their whereabouts.
I remember going into the DHS manager's office and saying to him, "This information has come from your office." And he virtually apologised, which to me was an admission of guilt. He knew himself that I couldn't say that it had actually come from his office. I do believe that the information will probably have come from our hometown, because obviously when you make a claim, that's the first people that get notified also. So I have no doubt in my mind that that information was leaked.
These people that we're talking about here, the people that actually go out looking for girls, the so-called bounty hunters, very often they can get their information from various sources, contacts that they have. The difficulty is that these people operate outside the law, and sometimes when they actually trace girls, can use violence or threats of violence and intimidation to try and persuade them to go home. Because of that, they're a real concern.
Jack and Zena, knowing that their hiding place had been discovered, went to the nearest police station for protection.
And we were like telling this story, and we were saying to them that how we were being tracked and all this, and they calmed us down, sat us down and took us names, and obviously had to bring us up on computer. And what happened was Jack turned around and said that, "Is everything okay?" Because this officer looked at us very suspiciously. He goes, "Yeah, you're okay." He goes, "But she's wanted for a £9,000 theft charge."
Zena's family had even come up with a fake theft charge to involve the police so that she would be found and brought home. Zena was taken back to her hometown. The charges proved groundless and were dropped, and she was returned to Grimsby. Here, the police decided that it would be safer for the couple if they left town at once, and they were escorted over the county line to Lincoln. Within weeks of Shazia's escape, she and Richard were reunited and went to live in a town far away from Scotland.
Although I didn't regret leaving my family, I was just worried about how they were sort of coping with the situation, and how what sort of taunts or sort of gossip they were receiving from the community around them.
Hoping for a reconciliation, Shazia travelled back to Scotland 4 months after leaving home.
I contacted the police and I said, "Look, will you help me in this? Will you actually come with me? Because I feel genuinely threatened." They then went with me to the house saying, "Look, we'll wait outside." And I said, no, I'd like you to come with me.
While the police officers could offer physical protection, they were unable to understand what was being said, as Shazia's family were speaking to her in Urdu.
"Oh, she's back, love it, oh, she's, all tears, and that was it. Brought me in, "Where have you been? This is what you've done to us. And how dare you come back here," and with the police officers. It was the same, exactly what had happened back then when they first kept me in. It was all the same situation. Sat me there, talked to me for hours, constantly called me all names, said this, and I was so scared and I was terrified because I couldn't even make myself tell the police officer, "Look, this is what they're saying." That's how frightened I actually. As soon as I stepped in that house, it all came back, started shaking, had palpitations and so on, and I was just so terrified. I could never go through that ever again.
"10 weeks after leaving home, Jack and Zena were on the move again. They travelled to the Isle of Wight to get married.
We felt that if they did catch up with us, if I didn't have any sort of legal bond with Jack, to them it would have seemed like, "Oh, well, she's still our property. We can take her back and send her back home." They still had the passport. I didn't have no evidence on me to say, well, they can't take me back home in one way or another. So I felt like we had to get married. Therefore, if they did try and take me back, I had proof of saying that I was Jack's wife. I remember ringing up my father a week before, just to let them know and to see if anything had changed. It was constant abuse on the phone, and the constant threats kept coming with it. And I remember my father saying to me in cold words that I had died for him the day I had left.
If you marry outside your family, one day you may be accepted and tolerated. If you marry within your own community, it still may be okay. That there may be a possibility of conciliation. But once you take a step of marrying totally from a different background, different culture, and different racial mix, then that's really, you have gone to the ultimate. And often, when you've taken that step, there's no way back.
I remember dreaming as a young girl that I wanted the fairy tale wedding. I wanted the 6 white horses, the glass carriage, the big dress, family, friends. What every young girl would probably want for a wedding. And I remember waking up that morning and having to settle for a second-hand blue dress, which I had to repair the night before because it had a rip in the sleeve. And we had to travel on a double-decker bus. I remember walking into the room and there were only 2 people, the witnesses. It was so sad. There was no one there to give me away. Got married, signed the paper and walked out. And come home to salmon pezzanis, which we had to share with a pot of tea. It was nothing like how I expected it to be.
It is the end of Saika's wedding, and the traditional leaving ceremony is taking place. It is always an emotional time. The daughter bids her own family farewell and is handed over to the care of her new husband and his family. For her father, the moment is bittersweet, the entrusting of a beloved and precious daughter to another man.
In terms of future, I'm more optimistic. I think as successive generations of people will be much more tolerant, and they'll make very different kind of decisions in the light of the society in which they're living. I think more and more young people from our faith communities will be choosing their own partners and will be making their own choices. And that is something I think we as a community need to talk about, have a debate, and come to some kind of an understanding of that.
"5 years after Nazreen ran away, she met a family friend who begged her to get in touch with her mother, and she did.
She was in tears and told me how much I'd changed and that she loved me and she was sorry for frightening me away. And then from then on, I started to go over on a regular basis. But I didn't include Paul. If I was to go to my mum and dad's, it was on my own. I don't really have much to do with my father. He just goes upstairs to bed, out of the way really, because he knows that I'm shy and a bit embarrassed for him, so he just gets out of the way and leaves my mum to it. But there have been occasions where I've gone over to my mum's with my jeans and my leggings and she's not been too happy. She doesn't come across as loving as she does when we're in the Asian salwar kameez. But I just couldn't bring myself to tell my mum about the baby. But I asked my sister-in-law to tell her, and she just turned round and said she just doesn't want to have anything to do with Paul. That's his child. But now my mum and dad don't want to have what to do with her. We just think, well, the best thing to do is to christen her.
A year after leaving home, Richard and Shazia are trying to build a new life, but they still feel unsafe.
There's never going to be one day that I don't look over my shoulder, or if a car stops beside me thinking it's them, or if somebody knocks at the door thinking it's going to be them, or a phone call is received at my work thinking this is a phone call from them. I'm not angry at them, and I don't really sort of, I can see in a sense of where they sort of initially came from, not what they did to me, but where they sort of came from, because it's a tradition. But I still think of them. They're always with my family. I would never dream of doing anything against them, what they've done to me. I don't want any revenge. I never think of that. I always think of them every day. I always hope that there will be some kind of relationship forming again. It doesn't have to be like it was before, because it'll never be like that. I don't expect it to be like that.
Looking for acceptance, really.
Yes.
And just to be able to live and be normal.
I don't mind if they don't accept him, really. I just want them to be neutral. All I can say, it was worth it, definitely, because I don't regret what I've done. I think it just goes to show that love can really pull through. You can just pull through, really. And we always had it set in our hearts that this is what we want, and no matter what, I would fight for it. And likewise.
Definitely.
Jack and Zena have now been on the run for 5 years and have lived at 19 different addresses. The authorities have granted them new identities, but they are still in fear for their lives.
Zena's family is still very much dictating how we lead our lives. If we go outside, what we do is we check which cars are in the street, if there's any strange cars that we don't recognise. If Zena goes anywhere, we have to time exactly how long it's going to take her to get there, how long time it's going to take her to get back. If she's going to be late, she has to immediately phone in.
I mean, we still sleep with knives under our beds, at the side of our beds. We still have the baseball bat in the corner. I think to even reconcile at this stage is going to be very hard, because of the threats that have been put to us. If they ever turned around and said, it's over, we couldn't take that at face value. But my love for them will always be there. I'll never ever lose that love. I'd do anything to hear them say that they love me. If I had to go through it all over again, I would, because I got the love of my life. To us, we have given the ultimate price, but I'm proud of it.
If you'd like details of organisations who can offer help or advice on the matters discussed in the programme, please call 0345 591 000.